Well, for me, the finding that we had in Kentucky was incredibly intriguing and also pretty shocking. The fact that I had collected a soil sample for eDNA.
Thing that became very evident during the daylight hours is that I start to notice that there are many of these large hollowed out tree stumps.
Cutting edge technology to aid them in their quest for evidence. We want to get the best specialists in the field, scientists, researchers, investigators, and we want to give them the latest technology.
And sent it to a very respected geneticist out at UCLA.
The forest didn't whisper, it held its breath. Deep in the heart of Kentucky, where the dense canopy folds in tight and the air grows heavy with silence, something ancient stirred beneath the trees. Dr. Mireya Mayer didn't come here looking for myths. She came for science, the soil samples, ecological patterns, rational answers. But what she found instead rewrote everything that we knew. It began subtly. Tree stumps, large, hollowed out, and oddly clean. Too clean. It was strange for the team because nature doesn't work with precision like that. Not on this scale. The patterns were wrong. The formations weren't weathered. They were shaped as if cut. And something about them gnawed at Maria's instincts. Something wasn't natural. Still, the daylight offered a thin veil of rationality. That veil evaporated the moment the sun dipped low, and the night swallowed the forest. The air thickened. The usual symphony of chirping crickets, rustling leaves, and the distant hoots of owls fell away like a curtain. In its place came a silence, heavy, watching. Mireya raised her hand to signal the team behind her. They all could feel it. The stillness. The sensation of being observed by something that wasn't supposed to be there. Then came the knock. It was a single deliberate sound, echoing through the woods. Then to their surprise came another knock, from somewhere deep within the darkness. Mireya's pulse surged. She wasn't a thrill seeker or ghost hunter. She was a primatologist with a rational mind trained to decode animal behavior. And that sound, it was familiar. Wood knocking. In Africa, chimps and gorillas use wood knocks to communicate, declarations of territory, warnings, messages. It was a form of communication, primitive yet intelligent. And it didn't belong here. They weren't in Africa. They were in North America, miles from civilization. And yet something was knocking back. She immediately ordered the drone up. The thermal drone lifted silently into the humid night sky. On the screen, heat signatures flickered. Deer, rabbits, known life forms. Then there it was. A massive upright figure, moving fast between the trees. Unnaturally fast. Too agile for its size. It ducked, weaved, and vanished. Then to the team's surprise, it reappeared, tall and wide, moving on two legs. The heat signature burned red on the screen and then suddenly disappeared into the darkness. The team sprinted toward its last known location. There, in the soft soil, they found it. Footprints, 17 inches long, deep impressions, wide, human-like toes. But nothing matched. No species, no hoax, no bear. And then came the most important piece of evidence that the team had recovered during their strange encounter. A piece of hair, tangled in a low-hanging branch, long, coarse, and dark. They retrieved the crucial evidence, carefully bagged, labeled, and sent it for DNA analysis. Days later, the results came back. The hair was primate, but there was no exact match in the global DNA index. It shouldn't have existed, but it did. That's when Mireya knew. This wasn't just some make-believe folklore anymore. Something was really out here, and Mireya and her team were closer than anyone had ever been. According to the legends, for centuries, indigenous tribes across North America had passed down these stories. It was about a guardian, a shadow of the forest, a giant who moved unseen, sometimes protector, sometimes omen, but always watching. Legends that endured were whispered across generations, dismissed by science. That was until now. The real problem had always been proof. There were photos, but they were grainy, shaky, often hoaxed. Footprints, large but unverified. Hair, Mysterious but inconclusive. Stories which were always dismissed. But Mireya wasn't chasing stories. She was chasing real data. She and her team were determined to do what no one else had been able to do before. Approach the legend with cutting-edge tech and rigorous science. Old-style 16mm film cameras were packed, known for their clarity. Thermal drones, motion sensors, high-definition audio gear. They didn't want blurry trail cam footage. They wanted the whole truth, real and raw. The deeper they pushed into the wilderness, the stranger the things became. There were no city lights, no distant highway noise, just trees, miles and miles of trees. Isolation became oppressive. Even for seasoned field researchers, something about this forest felt alive. But it was not in the way you'd expect. It seemed unsettling, like something ancient does when it's watching, waiting, and measuring. Mireya had studied all the descriptions. Bigfoot, Sasquatch, the Yeti, they shared traits. Towering height, 7 to 9 feet tall, thick fur, immense weight, strength beyond anything known in nature. And the eyes. Always the eyes. Deep, aware. The sightings weren't all the same, but there was always intelligence behind those eyes. Something that didn't just see you, but rather, it studied you. As dusk fell, the team moved toward reported hotspots. Broken branches, overturned stones, footprints too large to be faked. Makeshift shelters that were woven from logs and vines, more structure than accident. They weren't alone, and it seemed like the forest wanted them to know this fact. The night fell hard, shadows deepened, the wind died. They stepped into the black. Every twig snapped beneath their boots echoed like a scream. Then came the thermal camera ping. Large, humanoid, upright, standing still, watching. They adjusted the focus. They noticed a pair of broad shoulders, a hulking frame, and 2 glowing orbs that blinked once, then locked onto the camera. The team froze. It was staring, measuring them back. Then there was a sound, low, deep, guttural. It rolled through the trees like thunder from the earth itself. It wasn't a bear. It wasn't a wolf. It was layered, like a language that had been buried in sound. It reverberated in their chests, not just their ears. And then came the realization. This was communication, not instinct, not survival, intention. Above them, something shifted. Too high for a bear, too deliberate for a cougar. A massive heat signature perched in the upper branches. 2 eyes, glowing, unmoving. It wasn't fleeing, it wasn't hiding, but rather it was watching. A low clicking growl emerged from the canopy, a sound so foreign it felt otherworldly. The forest fell into a silence so deep it pressed into their lungs. Every primal instinct screamed to run, but Mireya didn't move. If this was it, the moment, then she wasn't going to blink. Then suddenly there was nothing. The figure vanished, no sound, no motion, just gone. The stillness returned, heavier than before. They followed. The forest led them to a triangular structure. 3 enormous trees snapped mid-trunk, perfectly arranged. It wasn't just some wind damage, not decay either. It was clear that something immense had done this. And near the formation, they discovered footprints, larger than before, deeper, leading away, and then a nest, massive, woven, more than a shelter, a habitat. Coarse hairs clung to branches, twigs were bent, snapped, shaped. The area reeked of presence. Motion sensors were deployed, drones launched. They were determined about not leaving without answers. Then there was a scream. It tore through the trees like a banshee wail, shrill, agonized, almost human but not quite. A seasoned lumber worker had once described the same sound, deep in these woods. He called it unholy, like someone being torn apart, but with intelligence behind it. His crew refused to return for days. Now it was Mireya's team's turn to hear it for themselves. Sure enough, the scream came again, this time closer, followed by snapping branches, heavy footfalls, and then silence. Their cameras picked up a figure moving through the trees. upright, covered in hair. Not a bear, not a man. Proportions didn't fit anything they knew. It slipped between trees like smoke, but it left tracks. Wide, human-like. Toes, no claws, no dragging. It moved with purpose and always just out of reach. They pushed forward, drawn deeper. Eventually, the trail led them to Alaska, Prince of Wales Island. It was a vast, isolated wilderness, rich in prey, poor in people, the last true frontier. And if there really was something that didn't want to be found, this was definitely the place where it would go. A 60-acre stretch of mountainous forest was chosen. Gear was upgraded. Infrared drones, long-range sensors, microphones tuned to subharmonic frequencies. Nothing would go unnoticed. And then, the eyes returned. Caught in the thermal lens, blinking, watching. Closer this time. Something had followed them to Alaska. Nest formations appeared again. Bark stripped in odd patterns, branches twisted and woven into unnatural shapes. Hair samples, again unmatched. There were footprints, but this time, it was deeper. Every step built the case further. Still, skeptics dismissed them. Misidentified animals, contaminated samples, hoaxes. But the team knew what they had seen, what they had felt. The forest wasn't just wild, it was aware. It was responding. And for the first time, the myth didn't feel mythical anymore. It felt personal. The final scream came in the early hours of dawn, long rising, then snapping to silence. The team froze. It hadn't been meant to scare. It had been meant to communicate, to say one thing clear and terrifying. I see you. They had come seeking proof, but what they found instead was presence. Footprints, hair, nests, sounds, shadows. But the most chilling discovery was the intelligence behind it all. Something really was out there. And it wasn't just surviving, it was living, hiding, watching, and perhaps choosing not to be found. Maria Mayer's expedition had changed the conversation forever. The legend no longer felt distant, it felt alive. And somewhere in the stillness, it still listens. And maybe, just maybe, it's deciding when to be seen.